It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is John Garrett, CEO, founder, and publisher of Community Impact newspaper. John and Jennifer launched the first edition of Community Impact in 2005 from the game room of their home with 3 full-time employees, covering the Round Rock and Pflugerville edition near Austin, Texas. Today, the newspaper has more than 240 employees, 33 hyperlocal editions across Texas, Arizona, Tennessee, and Georgia, and is delivered monthly to more than 2.7 million homes and businesses. John graduated cum laude from Sam Houston State University with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Radio and Television. John and Jennifer have 3 lovely daughters, Molly, Ruby, and Sophie, and live in Round Rock, and they are active members of City View Bible Church. John Garrett, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks, Brant. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You know, we're about week 4 into this COVID crisis. I know this episode is going to be launching a little bit later, but gosh, I'm just so grateful to hear that your family and your employees are well. It sounds like everybody's working from home as most of us are these days. And hopefully all of you that are listening to this podcast find it as a way of entertainment. Some of us need that from time to time, getting away from our day-to-day activities. And John, we're really excited about hearing your story. So let's talk a little bit about your early years. Tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a family of 6. I was the youngest of 4 kids.
Wow.
And but a really loving family, Christian home.
Yeah.
We really grew up in Austin, which is kind of rare.
Oh, wow.
Most people in Austin are have come here the last 10 or 15 years.
Sure.
And so, I grew up here, went to school actually in Pflugerville, where our corporate headquarters is now located, which is kind of cool. And went to school at Sam Houston, which is a state university in Texas, and really just had a great upbringing. My family was very supportive of all we were doing. And
tell me about your parents. What kind of work did they do? And what was mom working the home with 4 kids? I'm sure she was busy with that. But did she have an outside job? And what was dad's profession?
Yeah, so they actually owned an insurance brokerage company in Austin.
Yeah.
And so there were many, summers where the siblings and I would go out and put flyers at people's doors to try to help sell insurance to individuals. But I really learned the most about how local businesses are really important to communities through my parents' work. They would have a customer that maybe owned an auto shop whose
small business,
whose husband died,
oh,
right?
Boy.
And so the wife is left over trying to figure out what to do with the business. My dad's the life insurance salesperson, and so he's helping kind of help her like do buyouts and
really stepped in.
Yeah, and I just fell in love with mom and pops.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. So mom was involved in the business as well.
Yep, she was. She's probably she did. The interesting side note that was just interesting later is that my grandparents actually started a magazine called Texas School Business Magazine that was a magazine for school professionals. So they dipped their toe a little bit into that with them, and I learned some interesting lessons about that, about how family business together could also cause some cause some problems relationally. So,
well, it sounds like the publication business is part of your DNA. I know you spent a big part of your career, and we'll get to that in a minute. But that's interesting having that framework. And tell me, brothers, and you said you were 4 children. Were they brothers and sisters? I presume. Were they both?
Two sisters. I was the youngest. So I had an older brother who beat me up a lot, and you learn a lot. You become scrappy.
Was the kids involved in the business growing up? Was that some of the things that you did part-time? And
we would go out and do whatever we could to help mom and dad get new business. And but mostly, it was them, and they supported our little league games and let us do all the activities that we could possibly do.
Awesome.
So it was a good upbringing.
Now, you mentioned growing up in a Christian home. I'll say to our listeners, both John and I are members of C12 Group. It's a global now, right, peer advisory for CEOs that are faith-inspired and faith-based businesses. And John, I've been involved, I guess, going on my 3 years. I know you've been, Austin's a real hotbed for C12, and you've been involved for a while. But you'd mentioned that you grew up in a Christian home. So tell me about that. What role did Christ play in your upbringing?
Yeah. So, I mean, I remember accepting Jesus like outside of Sunday school, like when I was 5. I still remember the moment, but I didn't really I didn't really understand the need for a savior, frankly, until my teen years, which many people could probably relate to. Like that's when you start recognizing that you are a sinner. and so
so aptly said.
Yes. So by the grace of God, one day I remember reading a book, and it asked the question, if you were unsure about your salvation, how you can be sure, and walk through the gospel that it is a personal choice. And even if you make it when you're 5, that's still okay. But it is so you have to kind of make it your own, I think, at some point. And that's what I did. I recognized that I was a sinner, and I believed that Jesus loved me and died for me, and he defeated death. And I believe I believe the Bible when it says that if you believe it in your heart and confess it with your mouth, that you're saved. And so I made it my own. And that was transformative. I mean, it changed everything. I mean, when I went to college, I was, in a fraternity. I was a president of our fraternity, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in a fraternity. But I remember
some of which we can't talk about on a podcast, right?
Yeah, I don't want. Those were the analog years. We got to keep them in the analog.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I remember we got in a fight with another fraternity group. A bunch of people in our fraternity did. So we had like an all hands on deck meeting, and I brought out the Bible to that group to try to calm them down, to try to be the light, to those around us. And so, so it's been a big part of my life.
So mom and dad obviously were Christians and encouraged you kids to go to Sunday school, and you were involved. Was that a weekly event for you? Did you, have other things that you did growing up in the church, family camps and, summer, camps and so forth?
Yeah, we did a few summer camps. Mostly it was just church, Sunday church for us. And then a couple of youth camps. Really, I just felt like I recognized that there was a moment where it felt like that God was calling me to stand out, because there's a lot of Christians that kind of we just kind of like we're kind of scared to stand out in a crowd.
Sure.
I just noticed that
I had that until I was about 55.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
I believe you. I understand. What I found was interesting though is that when you do stand out, when you choose to do that, then all of a sudden you see all these other eyes and smiles pop up. Like they're so glad that you kind of stood up. And so when I learned that, I do it all the time now. When I speak, anytime I have a chance, I say something. Yeah.
Who were some of the other, or what maybe were some of the other early inspirations in your childhood?
I think it was really interesting. There's actually a U.S. senator that when I was in Pflugerville High School, I was in a speech and debate class, and this guy we'll call him Senator Langford out of Oklahoma, was actually a high school he was going to be a teacher. So he was like a student aide.
Wow.
And he could tell during my classroom that I was starting to talk a little bit about my faith, and he just took a real interest in me. And so he would take me out, we'd throw the ball around, and I remember at the end of his semester, he wrote me this note that just stood with me, and it was never tire of doing what is right.
Wow.
And
awesome.
Isn't that amazing? Like, and so
that's
then one day
he wasn't a senator then, just to be clear. He was just a kid who was a few years older than you, it sounds like.
Yes. Yeah. And I saw him on C-SPAN. I was like, what is going on? And now you see him on, CNN, and he's a pretty outspoken Republican senator. And so so that's pretty neat.
That's really cool.
And that was a neat moment. So I think it goes to just saying that, hey, like these kids, these youth, especially, they just reaching out to them and showing them some love, and that they matter, and just speaking some wisdom. Isn't that crazy that I remember that?
That's great. No, it's good. That's some of the, I can't remember a thing about what I learned my first year of college, but I had a debate teacher. Interesting that you mentioned debate.
Yeah.
I remember him telling me, Brant, you could be president someday, and I was like, are you kidding me? I was 19 years old, but you remember that. And he was so inspirational. Larry Williamson, I'll still remember, he's still teaching. And,
doesn't it challenge you to say,
it does. Oh, I'm the president of my own company. So he was right.
But what I mean is, like, what are we saying to the youth around us today?
Exactly.
Like, what words of encouragement can we give somebody around us?
We can do a lot more of that.
Yeah.
Were you a good student in school, John? Again, the early years, kind of middle school, high school?
Yeah, I was the student that always got good grades regardless of my work. I always did well in school, and even in college, I was smart enough to get those first, 6, I guess first 3 semesters of a strong foundation. I think I had a 4.0 until my third year of college. So I always, but it wasn't because I was like, I was an achiever. Like, I wanted to get good grades. Like, I cared about my grade. But I wasn't like studying all the time. Like, I wasn't that guy either. So
what did you do outside of class? Sports, music, theater, high school, middle school years?
Yeah, high school, I was doing debate, golf, and band. And then in college, I really just hung out with friends. That was really I joined a fraternity my sophomore year, and that was, God really used that in a big way to teach me about leadership and how do you lead people that have different values than you have, and who do you really want to hang out with. He taught me so much about leadership in those years in college. So awesome. Just getting involved. I studied radio and television. So I did sports broadcast radio for small high schools around, and really enjoyed that. And
you're not shy about being on a podcast, then, John?
Oh, well, listen, I'll tell you, it's that old story, right? Where the TV guys say you have a voice for radio. Well,
I was always told I had a face for radio, but I never knew what to make of it.
I'm sorry, I messed it up. The TV guys say I have a face for radio. Well, the radio guys said that I have a voice for the printed word. So,
I hadn't heard that one. That's good.
Well, that's my life. So that's why I studied radio and television, and I went to the newspaper.
Oh, God. What about entrepreneurial things? Were you doing any of those younger? Do you have the ubiquitous paper route, selling Christmas cards and stuff? Was that part of your upbringing?
My paper route is different. I was the guy that when my parents came into hard times, I was a big George Brett fan, a Kansas City Royals fan.
Sure.
And so I would run across the street, and instead of delivering papers, I would sneak them from my neighbors to find out how George Brett
what was going on. Right.
Yeah. If he was 0 for 4, I had a bad day, but then I would put the paper back in the wrapper and take it back over there. And I think my neighbors probably knew what I was doing, but as long as I returned it, I think they were okay with it.
Oh, that's cool.
But no, I didn't do the paper route. I did, I experimented a little bit with like baseball cards and that kind of thing, but never really got into business. I always felt like I wanted to own my own business.
Sure.
There's some funny stories there with my wife after college, but no, I was smart enough in college somehow to take 2 years of accounting, and that was really smart. It turned out to pay off.
Absolutely.
For me.
Yeah. Figuring out those numbers. But you said you did a little work for Dad in your mom brokerage growing up. Were there other jobs that you had during high school and college?
Yep, sure. I worked at a golf driving range. I worked at a movie theater. I was a guy with the bow tie and the suspenders, and
All the free movies you wanted.
Oh man, and listen, that was great for dates.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Best
Yeah, it
seats
was
in the
great for
house.
dates. Oh yeah. Yeah, we did that, and through college, picked up jobs all through the summer. Did a couple of really great internships, paid internships for the Houston Chronicle, and that's kind of
Well,
how I got in
you went to Sam Houston
newspapers.
State, great
Yep.
school, and
Hmm.
of course you got your radio television degree. And you'd mentioned earlier that your grandfather, I guess, was in the publishing business. What was the motivation for you to study that? Did Granddad have something to do with it?
Yeah, no, actually, what happened was I the summer before I well, 2 summers prior to that, there's a guy named Bill Schoening who at the time was the voice of the Texas Longhorns. He's now the voice of the San Antonio Spurs.
Right.
But he saw me wearing a Sam Houston hat, and he used to do Sam Houston Bearcat sports stuff. And
Oh,
so
wow.
he
Yeah.
asked me about it, and it was really funny because I grew up in Austin, so I knew when he spoke, like I knew exactly who he was.
Sure. Yeah.
And he said, "I'm Bill Schoening." I'm like, "Oh wow!" And he's like, so he gave me an internship, but he gave me some advice. He said, like, unless you want to start your career somewhere in the middle of nowhere, then maybe you should get into sales. And so that next
Right.
summer, I went to a radio station. I just walked in the door, and I'm like, "Look, like I just want to sell." And of course, they didn't really want to do that. I'm like, "Look, I'm not asking for any pay. Just give me a phone book and let me go." And they did, and I sold a ton. In fact,
Oh, that's great. I hope they paid you a commission.
They
least.
did. Yeah,
oh,
they
good.
did. And at the end of the summer, the owner of the station said he pulled me in his office, and he was like, "Hey, listen, instead of going back to school, why don't you stay?"
He saw a good thing.
Yeah, well, he was like, "I'll pay you $24,000."
Oh my gosh. And this was back in 95, 96,
yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. Wow.
And so I went home to my dad, and I was like, "Dad, this guy wants to pay me $24,000 a year." And he goes, "They don't give you all that at once, right?"
Oh, great.
And, so
Good
great
fatherly advice.
I went back to school, but anyways, at that point, one of my fraternity brothers actually was at the Houston Chronicle, and they had a world-class intern program that was actually really hard to get into. But the advertising director at the time, who eventually actually came to work for us, which is just a neat story. But he actually also went to Sam Houston, so
right.
he would always get one intern from Sam Houston, so he chose me, and I went there and worked really hard. I was put in some really good spots.
Well, the Houston Chronicle was your first job, right?
Yep.
Out of college, you were account executive. Did you get some leadership responsibilities early on there?
Well, I was on the retail team where a bunch of young women professionals were on, and basically they were having babies. And so which is great. They were going on maternity leave, and then I would own their territory. And so I would learn so much. And that's where my, love.
So you're filling in for them while they were on maternity. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so my love for, that I learned from my dad with local businesses, like it was just great. Man, I just love these jewelry companies and piano store people. And I just, I loved to work with them and help them. And so, I moved up pretty quickly at the Houston Chronicle. I got on what was called the food team, which was doing food circulars, that used to come in the mail. And I was at a pivotal moment with technology. I was helping these technology companies do real high level targeting. It was really advanced. And I was right in the middle, right at the right place at the right time, and learned a lot about circulation and mail, which really paid big dividends for me later when I started Community Impact. But
awesome.
We did great. I learned a lot there. I learned the funniest thing I learned, the best thing I learned at Community Impact the Houston Chronicle was, I had sold this really big deal. And so my bonus plan, I was maxed out on my bonus plan. So you know what I was doing? Every time a customer would call to want to run an ad, I'd be like, "Hey, can we wait till next?" Because I was up against the numbers. Right?
I got a deal for you next quarter.
Yeah, I can't. And I learned, when you build compensation plans for salespeople, be conscious of that.
Right, exactly.
You cannot beat your people up, and you gotta. So I learned some good things there. And
do you remember the first time you started managing people, John?
Yeah, it was I moved, my wife and I moved back to Austin, and I took a job at the Austin Business Journal. I was an advertising director.
You were there about 4 years.
Yeah, I was 26 when I took that job.
Yeah,
and that's where I learned I was a sales manager basically on the team.
Right.
And I
still
in
advertising, right? Advertising sales. Yep.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And I remember looking at my team there, and I'm thinking, man, I remember calling my dad again and saying, "Dad, I don't think I can win with any of these well, a couple of them, but the majority of the team, I was like, because it was 1999, 2000. So the tech bust was happening,
boy, yeah.
Salespeople were just feeling down, and and I'm like, hey, we got to go to work, and we got to go win. And so I learned how to fire people.
Yeah.
Really, that first firing is always the most awkward for somebody, I think. That was a really awkward moment for me. And then I learned how to hire great people. And I learned, we used Gallup at the Business Journal, which is, American City Business Journals, which is a pretty big company.
Right.
We used Gallup there. And I learned that those things work. Like when they would say that this candidate was an A candidate, they were. And when they were a C candidate, even though you liked them, they were a C candidate. And I learned those
you can't spend
work.
as much time on them.
Yeah. Even though you love them.
Yeah.
So,
well, we've all had mentors as well as tour mentors, right, in our career. And without mentioning any names, did you have experiences with people that, had worked or you would work for in the past where you said, boy, that behavior, gosh, I'm sure going to do things differently when I manage people or I have my own, company someday.
Yeah, I think you learn in every job, you learn what somebody did really good at and what their weaknesses were, right? And so you try to leave the bad and take the good. But I think as I've matured in my own leadership, like I give my old bosses just a ton of grace because like I have a bunch of weaknesses too. And the idea that, I think so, we're community impact. We do strengths based. We really love that model. And so we really focus on people's strengths and I've learned like, wow, like that's powerful. So instead of focusing on the negatives of my old bosses, like, wow, like there were things that they did that were unbelievable. Like, focusing on those strengths is kind of where my head has been. But sure, I've had really
any specific lessons or behaviors that you can pinpoint and go, yeah, that was a good one. I don't think I'll be doing that to my people.
Yeah. Like, I had a boss that every time like a new computer would come in, this boss would just take it, like, and give you the old one.
Give you the old. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
And it was I was just always looking at that, like, I don't know. I always thought that was kind of odd, but So that's one thing. That's a small thing, but also just realizing, just trying to find the best in people instead of the worst in people is really, you can always look at people and be like, this person's not very good at this and this and this. Or you can look at them and it's like, but you know what they really are good at? They're really good at this and this,
Absolutely.
So that's kind of some of the lessons I've learned.
So after your 4 years as ad director at the Austin Business Journal, you decided with your wife, Jennifer, to found the Community Impact newspaper. And some would say, wait a minute, in 2005, with the internet going full stream and with, periodical regular newspapers already beginning to feel the crunch, what was John thinking about? So tell us a little bit about the inspiration around community impact at that time, particularly that point in time.
Yeah, I always wanted to just be an entrepreneur, and I had all these ideas. But this one, because it fit so well with my background, I was the Houston Chronicle and the Business Journal, and the bottom line is I learned enough about the industry to know that to build a subscription-based newspaper back in 2005, even during, those were still kind of the peak. Newspapers were making a lot of money back then.
Still.
And had a lot of subscribers. But I learned at the Business Journal that subscriber acquisition was so expensive. Like it was really hard to get these subscribers. And so I knew the paper had to be free. I knew the Houston Chronicle taught me about mail, the power of mail. The key for me was that Jennifer and I were living in a suburban area in Round Rock, and we didn't know anything that was happening around us. Like all the local papers were about Johnny kicking the winning field goal. And we didn't even have kids at the time. We just wanted to know when the stupid road construction was going to be done, when they're going to build a Starbucks near our house. Like we just wanted to know that stuff. And so I built this like idea together, and I felt like, wow, like I always felt like the average Joe citizen wants to know what's happening in their community. I always felt like the average taxpayer would really love a business journal in their community, but if it was relevant to them. And so I was like, let's just create a local business journal for the local citizen. and let's build this mail model that it makes no sense to most people, but let's mail out 60,000 of these newspapers for free.
For free. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And see what happens. And
so it's totally ad driven, and
yes.
always has been. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I mean, when the first one went out, we hit a home run. And so we just kept, we funded it off of a Southwest Airlines credit card check. And
you got miles too.
We got miles too. And it was a crazy day. God played a big role in that though. Like,
tell me about that. That was my next question.
Yeah. So
how was Christ
I had this
involved?
idea. I built the business plan. I felt like I had actually Jennifer's sister was helping us with some of it. Like she just graduated from tech and didn't have a job. So she was helping us. And I was just like, let's just, I don't know. I just didn't have the courage. I didn't have the courage. I have a great job. I mean, we were performing at a high level in the company. Like there's 41 business journals. We were number 1 or number 2 every month.
Awesome.
But like, anyways, I didn't have the courage to leave. And one day, my boss pulls me in our office and she says, hey,
this is back at ABJ, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Right.
And she said she had a call from corporate and that somebody had complained about me sharing my faith with them. And so I was like, I mean, I've always been, we're
extrovert.
in the middle. Yeah, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, so I'm talking about God a lot, right? And I think people are open to it right now, but I've never been like out of my way. Like I will salt my talks, but I'm not like pounding people with the Bible or anything.
Right.
And so anyway, she said corporate said that if I continued or if I shared my faith with one more person, that I would be fired and she would be fired.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And so I was like, that to me was God saying, and God's grace, because I was in his word and I just felt confident. I just felt like God was saying, okay, this is it. Like you need to go.
Right.
And so it's really hilarious. Like you talk about corporate mismanagement. It just stirred so many people in the organization. There are a lot of Christians in that organization that were really upset with what corporate was doing, and they thought I was going to sue them. And I wasn't. Like I was like, no, I was like smiling and I was telling Lynn,
you got your message.
I was telling her my idea. Like I was telling her what I was going to do, and she's like, that is crazy. Like that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
Had you and Jennifer been talking about doing this prior to that happening? Yeah. Well, there you go. There's God at work.
Yeah. Sure. She loved the idea. She was always. All my other ideas were bad, and she just supported this idea.
Amen. And that's a voice of God if there ever was one. Right?
Amen. Yep. She is my filter in so many ways. So that's how we got it going.
Well, that's great. And gosh, 14, 15 years strong, still profitable and growing. And how many employees today, John?
We have about 240 employees.
Wow.
We have a great group of people. Definitely, everyone says that people are your number one asset, but we're really seeing it right now, especially during this time, trying to navigate this difficult time. And
have you had to make any cuts or
not
staffing?
And at the moment of this recording, and man, I'm just praying that I can. Here's the deal: where we're at right now, and who knows when people are going to hear this, but it's really starting to spread in the U.S.
Yes.
We're in the middle of the uncertainty of like how long it's going to be. Right. It hasn't really hit as many people as we personally know yet, but we feel like it's coming. And and so all of the industry, in the newspaper business has already furloughed people. They're laying people off, and most industries are to be fair. And I just feel like right now where we're at today is I feel like I'm a steward of our people. And even though every organization has, maybe some ways that they can trim down and be more efficient. We certainly do. But because we're in growth mode, so we have all these people that are helping us grow an organization. And sure, if we're not going to grow, the next few years because of this impact, what we're going to have here, then I'm overstaffed. But right now, in this moment, because of the business that you're in, it feels like I would be totally abandoning my people if I let them go right now. Like, how are they today? I mean, things might change in a few weeks. We'll see. But today, like, how are they even going to get another job?
That's right. Yeah. It's true.
So we don't know how it'll all play out. We know there's some help coming from the government and helping with payroll and And
Still a
we've
little
definitely,
vague, but it's supposed to be coming, right?
yeah.
We're in early April now for folks that are
and people listening to this
listening.
podcast are laughing at us right now because it did not turn out like we were told.
One way or the other. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, like and I don't know what'll happen. And I know that rebuilding this thing is going to be really hard. So I don't know what our organization is going to look like on the other side of this. But so far, I'm
But are
really
the
thankful.
advertisers still coming? Are you getting, commitments? Because if, you're not subscription based, so you really are reliant on a lot of local businesses, right? For the most part.
Yeah. I mean, as of today, like already, I mean, we've lost 30 to 40% of our bookings like overnight. So I'd imagine that it's probably going to get a little worse as people are shut down and they can't do anything. But we're fighting, we're innovating, we're doing some great things on the digital side that probably would have taken us months to do if it wasn't for this time. And so I'm really proud of some of the
focus
work that
on
we're
what
doing.
It's going to look like on the other side. Right?
Exactly. We're doing everything we can, and I'm proud of that.
So you said 240 employees, and what's your circulation now, and how many different journals?
Yeah, we have 34 editions. We have 2.7 million households.
Wow, fantastic.
And we've got a great, we're really well received in Texas. We started Phoenix a little over a year ago, in Gilbert and Chandler, and they're starting to come out into their own. We started Nashville.
So not just rural, you're in some major cities too. You mentioned Phoenix and Nashville.
Yep. We're awesome. Austin, Houston, Dallas, Phoenix, Nashville, and Atlanta. So we're definitely in, we're inner loop in Houston. We're all over Austin, including Central and downtown area. And then we're up in Dallas. We're up in Collin County, and we're starting to move into Dallas proper.
So tell us a little bit how you kind of integrated God and, your faith-based approach, when you're getting those messages that it was time to move on from AVJ. And what does that look like today at Community Impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. So even in this moment we're facing, so we, 2008 or 2009, we came up with our company values, which are, we call them the 5 stones. And it's based on the David and Goliath story. It's that David was not scared of Goliath because he had his values. He knew what he could do.
Yep.
And so we've got 5 of those values as well that we've, over the last, for our company's 15 years old, but we've used these values for the last 12 or 13 years. We recognize our employee. I mean, it's part of our culture. So like we talk about innovation and quality and passion, and faith is one of our stones, and integrity. So we're talking about these values all the time, and we're recognizing our employees all the time about how they're living out our values in their work. And what's really funny about these values is that we said that when we established them, it was like one day there's going to be a media giant. We, of course, Facebook and Google come to mind or something, but they would call us out, and we were going to be there as David. And how are we going to know that we're going to beat Goliath, the giant? We knew we were going to beat him because of our values and who we were as an organization. And, I got to tell you something, Brant, like we're right in the middle of this, and I don't know how this is going to go down, but it turns out that our giant isn't so giant. It's a microscopic virus that you can't even see that is staring us down and calling us out. And so we're using our values to kind of overcome it. And,
that's great.
And so,
sometimes you can win when you bring 5 rocks to a sword fight.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
It sounds like
especially if you're good at it.
That's right. That's right. You got the new technology. Let's talk a little bit about your culture. You've touched on values. You obviously CEO, founder. It sounds like Jennifer's involved in the business. How do you build your culture? And tell me a little bit of what's unusual or unique about Community Impact newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, if you meet our, we call them impactors. If you meet our people, like
I love that.
They're just unique. Like they are as passionate about our mission and our values as Jennifer and I are. Our mission statement says that we want to build communities of informed citizens and thriving businesses through the collaboration of a passionate team. And it's just a kind of a moral authority. Like, who doesn't want to be part of helping citizens know what's happening around them with the news, and who doesn't want to help local businesses do well, and who doesn't want to be doing it with people that they like to work with that inspire each other. And so I think we have these things all over our walls, but it's the heartbeat of who we are. It's not just on our walls. And so, in fact, as we're all working from home now, I'm telling the team, we don't have these values on our walls anymore. So what does that mean? Who are we? Is it just our walls, or is it who we are? Right. And so I think that's
good test of culture.
Yeah, for sure. And I think,
what do you do when no one's looking?
Yeah. Now I'll tell you, like, I want to say that right now in our company's history, it's never been better. But I also, I know you've got listeners out there that are building a business that might be in middle of culture hell right now, and we've been there too. Like, companies that go through teenage years where everything's awkward and hard. And there's a great book called No Man's Land that really spoke to me kind of during some of our growth years, that it just is so hard to move from kind of that small company to large company, or medium company, and then medium company to large company. All those phases are very difficult. Yeah. And we made a lot of mistakes. I personally made really, really bad mistakes with people decisions, and when you do those kind of things, you learn from them, but you pay. Yeah. Right. And it takes a long time to rebuild trust and to rebuild culture. But I feel like right now we're in such a good place. I have an executive team around me that that knows my weaknesses and that won't let me. The strengths-based stuff has, like, when you have a strength that's kind of in the basement, when you're in the basement with it, and they won't let me. They want me let me go there. They call me out on it.
Good for them.
Yeah, which is who we are, and so. I think culture,
that reminds me of a question that I heard recently asked, and it's you're, as a CEO, you're usually in a position where you expect to get your questions answered. How do you behave when you're in a situation where your answers get questioned?
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm getting better at this. I used to, that debate background is not good for us.
Yeah,
right? Like it's kind of scary. But I've learned, I had a coach that kind of helped me understand that I have these, that my emotions will start in my gut and I can almost feel them and they go straight to my tongue. Like, it's like, so somebody will say something that hits me in my gut and it goes straight. So my coach kind of helped me realize that. And she taught me some ways to kind of recognize it when it's happening. And so the key is you don't speak, you just give your brain a second to catch up. So I now.
But it sounds like you've got a team around you that does that, right? That's the point.
Yeah, and
that's good.
And they love me, and I'm getting better at telling them, well, that's interesting. Let me think about that.
What do you look for when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire, John?
So we used to have this phrase that we don't use anymore because our HR team didn't love it, but it was the only way I could figure out how to make it stick. So we used to say we only hire liars, and liars was an acronym, and it stood for likable. Like we want to be around people that there's that old phrase. It's a barbecue and road trip test, those kind of barbecue and beer tests or something like that. There's a lot of companies that build. The idea is like we have a lot of different people, but we need to be likable. If we're going to be a passionate team, you have to be somebody that can be a good teammate. You can't just be somebody that's just on your own, not in our environment. It just doesn't. You just don't fit in, and you won't like it. And then the I stood for intelligent. So it doesn't matter. We always wanted to, when our salespeople were talking to local mayors, we wanted them to feel like, wow, like this person is like working for like the Wall Street Journal, like that kind of level of intelligence about issues that we're writing about. The A was achievement oriented. So like we want people to take pride in their work and they're proud of their hard work and what the fruit they produced. And the R was responsible. Like we can't micromanage. And so those are the four things that I still look at, like when I'm interviewing people. Yeah. It's just, we used to say we surround ourselves with liars. And like I said, our
I can see where HR might have a problem with that, but I love the acronym. I'm sure those 240 people you were involved in, probably a lot of the hiring. I'm sure today you don't get involved as much, maybe down the road or down the food chain, so to speak. But if you only had 5 minutes to interview someone that was maybe a level or two below you, but that person really wanted to make sure because they were going into a certain, position that was important for the company, what would you ask them in that short period of time?
Yeah, I mean, I go through that liars thing in my head. So I ask. The questions I ask are like, if I was to hang out with, your 5 friends, what would they say is the reason that they like to hang out with you? I like to say, demonstrate to me, what's the thing you're the most proud of? The trick question was always like, hey, every environment is different and every company has a different way of doing things. Right. In fact, I learned this the opposite way, which is really funny. I learned this in an interview and I answered it incorrectly based on this organization's culture. But the question is like, do you need a manager that's there with you, guiding you and helping you and making sure that you're doing all the right things? Or do you want a manager that believes in you and allows you to have freedom? And it's kind of a trick question because we don't have time to micromanage people. And so the organization that when I was younger, when I interviewed for it, I answered it like, I want freedom. I want this person to believe in me. And they were like, no, this is how we're going to manage you. And I was disqualified because of that answer. But for us, it's kind of the other way. Like, if you need a lot of supervision, it's probably not going to be a good fit for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's other organizations out there that are built that way and they like it that way. They don't want you to go outside the lines. Where we're kind of a little bit more like, hey, here's the lines, stay kind of close to them, but it's okay.
You do that every now and then. That's okay.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, John, time has just flown by, but we do have one last question we ask all of our CEOs and Into the Corner office. And that's what, career and life advice would you give to someone who, has their eyes on the corner office or perhaps wants to be an entrepreneur like you and set up their own business?
Yeah, I mean, the best advice I'd give you is to really think, if you're thinking about opening your own business, to me, it's the question of not what could be or what should be, but what has to be. That's an Andy Stanley idea, author Andy Stanley. That has really just helped me because you're gonna have really bad days. And so if you think it'd be nice if I built a coffee shop, that could be great. Like that may not be enough to sustain you through those bad days. Like it has to be like, you got to think through like, why do I have to have that coffee shop? Why does our community have to? Because that'll fuel you through the difficult days. And if you're just looking to get to the corner office, like the other advice that goes for both groups is birds of a feather flock together. And who are you around? And listen, if somebody is like above you that doesn't meet with you values wise, listen, like it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. You do not want that corner office if you've got to sell your values short. So know who you're around, know who you are, and be around people that make you better, make you who God created you to be.
Awesome, John. John Garrett, CEO, founder, and publisher of Community Impact Newspaper. Thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Thanks, Brant.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.